Hello and welcome to Eamon On Track. I am your host, Eamon. Today, our first album will be the musical. We're going to talk about a soundtrack for a musical this time, but for Hamilton, which originally premiered on January 20th, 2015, mainly the brainchild of Lin-Manuel Miranda. And joining me today as guest is my father, Dave Mader.
Hello.
Hi. So
Hey.
yeah, I just really like this album. I think that it's a good starting point. I know you and I both really like this, so
Yeah, well, we were trying to, so we knew we wanted to do a new podcast that was going to be reviewing albums, and a lot of different ideas got thrown around of what that could be. Ultimately, I was like, well, like maybe you could have different guests come on,
Yep.
and they could pick the album. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be the first guest, then I this one I went with because I started listening to this album after I saw the show on Disney Plus, because they put the original Broadway cast recording. They filmed it one night in 2015, and you can now watch that on Disney Plus anytime you want if you have that service. So then during the pandemic, I would just go for like these long walks, and I would listen to this album a lot. Because if I had a 3-hour walk ahead of me, this would really help fill it. Listening to the tracks in order and kind of reliving the show. But I think that the songs individually really shine. I
think that it's surprisingly the songs shine individually just as much as they shine in the order they're in, right?
Right. So there's definitely a story here. There's a bigger, like, it's a little bit of a history
Obviously,
lesson
it's a musical
in some ways, because this is it's loosely like based on
based
real
off
life,
the life of Hamilton,
the real Alexander Hamilton, and some of the other American founding fathers and mothers for that matter. Although a lot of these songs are just like kind of catchy songs, and I don't think that there's been a show like this that's connected with me since Rent. Like, I think Rent
which makes a lot of sense, really, because Lin-Manuel Miranda, his hero was Jonathan Larson.
Right. And you can see how that inspired him here.
Right.
And how that kind of led to this. And my understanding of like the development of this show and of this musical was that it took Lin-Manuel Miranda many years.
He was writing it since the 2000s, I think, 09-ish.
I think even going back even further, because he was doing sort of like these raps that were kind of based on history. He had played at the White House, and he had been on a couple of shows. I think he'd been in Grey's Anatomy maybe at some point before this. But I think that there's like the very first song of the show, which is titled Alexander Hamilton, and maybe this is a good segue for us to get into the different tracks of this song. From what I understand, took him and his workshop, which a lot of the original cast did, who were in that workshop went on to be in the main like Broadway cast as well. And from my understanding, that original song took them over a year just to get that one song done.
Right.
And then we're going to talk about another 45 songs that come after this. But this opening song, and we'll play a couple seconds of it for you here for a second. So it starts out with the sentence, how does a bastard orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by Providence, impoverished and squalor, grew up to be a hero and a scholar.
Now this is the first of many repeating things we have, which is kind of Burr talking about his own viewpoint of Hamilton at the point in the story, right?
Yeah, well, I think that they're kind of setting up. Aaron Burr, we meet him right off the bat. He's our narrator for this story, as played originally by Leslie Odom Jr. And he's playing the Burr, so he's our narrator for most of this story, and we are getting his context of it, but it's also kind of just to set us up here with that Alexander Hamilton, unlike a lot of the other characters in the story, doesn't come from like this kind of rich, privileged background. He's
literally the opposite of that.
Yes, he's like all the circumstances of his life should have everything against him. He's not born with advantages, and as the story of this song kind of goes on, we're told about how he was the $10 founding father who didn't even have a father, who had to get farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. And by 14 years old, they'd placed him in charge of a trading charter. And this really speaks to the whole thing about the whole album and the whole story and the show, is that, you know, it's kind of really about America too, about the American dream and what the ideals of that, you know, and how that's romanticized by American culture. I think
obviously it's about America because it's about the founding fathers, but
more specifically about Alexander Hamilton, you know. And I think that even like this as a premise to people, like I don't think anybody would have ever thought that this would be a compelling thing, because Alexander Hamilton, he was the first Secretary of the Treasury. You know, not exactly sexy stuff, you know.
No.
He wasn't George Washington, he wasn't the great general, he wasn't John Adams, the great scholar, or Thomas Jefferson, similarly.
Well, that's kind of what sparked Lin-Manuel Miranda to make this, right? And they kind of mentioned this in the musical, is that he's the one who's forgotten about compared to everyone else.
Right. You know, we find out about his story, how, you know, where he grew up. It was like majorly the slave trade, while slaves were being slaughtered and carted away, where, you know, there was something that he had to steal and barter and borrow. And then it talks about a hurricane hitting his island and destroying it, but how he applied himself. He went to school. He kept going, getting his studies. He always kind of had the blinders on, and we get a sense of the determination of Alexander Hamilton in the story. You know,
this will obviously, you know, permeate throughout the album or the story.
Right. And then and from Aaron Burr, we get, well, the word got around, this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Right. Get your education. Don't forget from whence you came, and the world is going to know your name. What's your name, man? And that's when Lin-Manuel Miranda says Alexander Hamilton. And there's a million things I haven't done. Just you wait.
Right.
You know, so this song alone, it's the opening of the show. It's the opening of this album. I just listened to it, you know, as I went on for a little walk. I think it's amazing. It's fantastically good.
I just like the way that it kind of it does such a good job of like building up this setup for him in like a minute or so.
There's so much in this, you know, the fact that like they set up so many riffs that will be carried forth in other songs that come later on. Like,
and that's part of what I love about this, is that we have so many themes coming through, right?
Right. You know, the idea of not throwing away my shot or your shot, which also comes down to the duel between Burr and Hamilton. That's definitely
well, there's kind of a theme of duels in this, because there's three separate duels.
The idea of like, that's a shot. You're obviously shooting a gun or a musket or whatever, but it's also your shot in life and what you need to do with it.
And what I love about that too is that it's coming from the character's point of view, but it's also, if you think about it, it's coming from the actor's point of view.
Right. You know, you're getting both. Because this show is not written or like, it's set in like the 1770s, and be a little bit beyond that, and 25 years beyond that. But it's not written as a period piece or period accurate. People are speaking in more modern vernaculars. Obviously, like people, Leslie Odom Jr., African American, does not look
a lot of black people in this,
and Asians and because Lin-Manuel Miranda just made it as like, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is or your race is. You know, anybody other than the men play men and the women play women mostly. That's really the only kind of structure he has there, and that it's really more about the spirit of it, you know. And I think it's complicated because America does have like this really painful, dark, bloody history, you know, that is built on slavery and built on colonialism and exploitation, but there's also a lot of good in there too, and there's a lot of noble things, and so I think that there's a ton to be celebrated. But I got, just before we move on from this song, Yeah, like the whole thing, like in New York, you can be a new man is kind of really set up. And then at the end of the song, the ship is in the harbor now. See if you can spot him. Another immigrant coming up from the bottom. His enemies destroyed his rep. America forgot him. And then we get to kind of meet, we fought with him. We see the soldiers who are played by, the different characters.
Right.
Me, I died for him in Lawrence. Me, I trusted him in George Washington. Me, I loved him in Eliza, his wife. And me, the damn fool that shot him, which is Aaron Burr.
Right.
And how that regret and how that one moment in their life is really, or both their lives, is going to define each of them, Okay, so second track, Aaron Burr, Sir.
We kind of get the meeting between
1776. New York City.
Pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir?
That depends. Who's asking?
Oh, sure, sir.
So this is where Aaron Burr and Alexander meet. It's
immediately obvious they don't think alike.
Yes, how different they are. They meet at King's College. How Alexander approaches Aaron Burr because Alexander wants to get through school faster, and he knows that Aaron Burr has gotten through his studies very fast. How did you do that? I was told, he's like, I punched the bursar, and there's all this. But we get to meet this other group of characters who are based on real people, like Hercules Mulligan, John Lawrence, and Lafayette, who are like the different characters that more like Hamilton are like proud of being wanting to be part of the revolution, that they want to stand up against this, because this is in the time right before the American Revolution breaks out. War hasn't actually started yet, but there's no Declaration of Independence quite yet.
It's obviously the year, but
and this song sets up that the difference between Aaron Burr and Alexander, who Aaron Burr's like, hey, I'm with you. I agree with you that there should be a revolution, but
shut up and smile.
People who like smile more, talk less, is kind of his mantra. He just like, don't let people know what you're about. Don't give them a chance to use that against you. Keep your mouth shut and you double your choices is kind of his point to them. But then the other guys who don't like Burr because he's not the brave guy or whatever.
He's not willing to speak up on issues that could get him in trouble.
Right. But I think that the line in this track that really stands up for, or that kind of really defines it, is what he says to Burr. He says, if you stand for nothing, Burr, then what will you fall for? Right. And
I love that. Yeah, exactly.
But we see that despite this difference that they have, and the fact that the other guys, Alexander Hamilton's other like male friends that he makes in this scene, in this song, him and Burr still are friends, are
right.
Like,
they still like each other, but there's a bit of a disagreement,
a rivalry, or a difference of opinion right from the beginning on how they approach life. So that's set up, and then that the Aaron, as when he says that, well, if you stand for nothing, then what will you fall for? And then everyone's like, who's this guy? Who's this guy? What's he gonna do? Who's this guy? What are we gonna do? That leads right into My Shot, which is probably the most famous song from the show.
Probably.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot.
There's another one that comes up. I'm just like my country. I'm poor, scrappy, hungry.
Yeah, just like my country. I'm sorry, what is it again?
Poor, scrappy, hungry, I think.
Just like my country, I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. But that's which of course leads, to the whole end of the show. The whole end of Alexander Hamilton's story was that he was throwing away his shot. He was shooting in the sky.
He's shooting in the air, yeah.
But he would not throw away his shot,
right.
But
he would, shoot upwards to kind of
his shot in life. This is his shot in life. I'm about to get my scholarship to King's College. I probably shouldn't brag, but dag, I amaze and astonish, which is something his son will say later on in the show in another song. And when I first heard of Lin-Manuel Miranda, he was hosting Saturday Night Live, and I was like, "Who is this?" Like I hadn't even heard of the show Hamilton yet at that point.
Yep.
And he performed this song on Saturday Night Live as sort of part of his monologue. And I always thought it was I was like, wow, like, okay, I don't know what that was about. I don't know what that song was, but that was
you're interested.
I was interested. It got me at least to kind of go, okay. That I never heard a song like that, quite like it's a rap song, but it's about, I don't know, colonial America.
I love how kind of this album mixes rap and traditional musical themes,
right?
I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of got it keeps going between like rap, hip hop, sort of more urban type, even rap battles and things like that. But then it's also very much a musical that has a lot of like traditional musical numbers and sort of like that, and it kind of musically really has a lot of that. This song being, I'd say, more of like throwing down. This is what I'm about. And this song's also about
his allies.
Yeah, like like there's some verses here from like the other guys, like Lafayette. He dreams. We get to understand what he's about. The unrest in France, because France would go on to have their own French Revolution after the American
which
Revolution.
becomes a theme of this, a lot later.
Yeah, and I think that this is something too, like this kind of deep connection with the French that I think sometimes in America is forgotten, but a lot of the United States does owe its creation or its independence at least to
France.
And
then America would help France later, but
but then after the king was killed, and that comes up in the show too, right? Where Hamilton's like, well, what do we do? Like, we signed a treaty with a king who's dead now, so what does it matter? And that's why Jefferson gets all down on Hamilton. He's like, do you not have your honor? Do you not, Lafayette, who helped us when we needed him?
But I think Hamilton makes a good point, which is we're just not in the position to help.
Right. Well, I think it's the reality of the politics and things like that. And it also speaks to the history of it, because after the war, there were Americans who were pro-France and there were Americans that were pro-England. And actually, Alexander Hamilton was on the side that was pro-England. He was more he favored the United States having more favorable relations with the British Empire.
That's interesting.
We see that Angelica Schuyler, the sister of Eliza, goes on to marry a guy from England.
That's right.
And so the Federalists were more, the party that Alexander was part of was more friendly to England, whereas the Democratic Republicans, which eventually just became the Republicans as we know them, they were more favorable to France in the beginning.
Right.
So so I like this song, really good. It's not my favorite song in the show, but it's always a really powerful one. It really sets up. Like,
I think it sets up. It's the setup point, really.
And how the song ends, like, we're going to rise up. Take
another
time
theme
to
that
take a
comes
shot.
back.
And that we're seizing the moment, seize the day. The next song, The Story of Tonight, which is a song, a bit of a slower song. Raise a glass.
I may not live to see our glory.
I may not live to see our glory.
But I will gladly join the fight.
But I will gladly join the fight.
And when our children tell our story.
And when our children tell our story.
They'll tell the story of
tonight. Yeah. So Raise a Glass to Freedom.
I just really like the way that this kind of sets up. They're willing to die for their country, but I also like that it sets up, obviously when we get the reprise of this, when what's his name dies,
when Lawrence dies later on.
When Lawrence dies, kind of, pretty much goes into that.
Well, it's there's two reprises. There's the one, and then there's the one where Lawrence dies later. But this song is all about like that they're young. We're told that they're like 18, 19 years old, right? All of these characters, and they're kind of like, well, wait, like they might be going off to die. Like they're like that's kind of the thing about going to war, which we haven't really dealt with in my generation, not even my father's generation, really.
No.
Like, so not since my grandfather.
Not since World War II, really.
Not really since World War II, especially for Canadians.
Yeah.
I think the Americans less so because they fought in Vietnam and some other things. But like this, you're young, but there's kind of like if you're fighting for a noble cause, then this could be what it's all for, right? So they kind of the bonding, I think, of between these male characters, I think more than anything, is kind of really set up here.
And it's really charming, really, honestly.
Yeah, no, I like this.
Interactions,
the camaraderie, know. I would have just good. Here's a comment from Davan from our sister show on the United Federation podcast, the X-Men, the animated review show. He says, looking forward to this podcast. Excellent first choice. Hey, want to have a discussion about the American dream? I would be happy to, Davan. It's the ideals of it, the pursuit of it, and the reality of it, I think are all very different points, but
very much so.
But I don't know. I tend, even though I see like as a Canadian, I see like sort of like the romanticized doctrine of the American story, the story, the dream, the legend of how their country came to be, which is also just kind of, it's not completely accurate, or at least it's more
it takes
nuanced.
Its liberties.
It's not as I think a lot of Americans just like pedantically look at it as like, well, we were oppressed by a king, and then we overthrew the king and we invented democracy and we invented freedom forever. It's not really quite that simple.
It's not quite. I mean, the oppression was more just taxing, which they go over.
Yeah, it was about taxes. It was about money. It was about control. It was about why should we listen to some, it was
this person who's just taxing us to death, making us poor, all that.
They were taxing them because there had already been the French Indian War, but years before that, and there were there's a lot of things that like it's not as simple as that narrative, but it's not that either. It's like it's just more of a simplified version that you can tell kids. But,
exactly.
But this show tries to put more history into things, while still very much being loving America, loving this legend, loving the story of Alexander Hamilton. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt in some senses. The next song is called The Schuyler Sisters, which is a really energetic song.
There's nothing rich folks love more than going downtown and slumming it with the poor. They pull up in their carriages and gawk at the students in the common just to watch them talk. Take Philip Schuyler, the man is loaded. Uh-oh, but little does he know that his daughters, Peggy, Angelica, Eliza, sneak into the city just to watch all the guys.
Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy. The Schuyler sisters. Angelica, Peggy, Eliza.
So
I like that. Because Peggy's not going to be important to the rest of this play, they kind of play her off as a joke, and Peggy.
Peggy,
just the abruptness of it.
It's funny, because and the woman whoever plays Peggy goes on to play the mistress later on in the show.
Oh, okay.
No matter what, like, so there are certain roles like Lafayette's role. Whoever plays Lafayette will always play Thomas Jefferson in the second act.
Okay.
Or whatever, and whoever plays Hercules Mulligan will play Madison in the second act, and whoever plays Lawrence will play his son.
I guess I never thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Madison is Hercules.
It's the same guy, right?
Yeah, and I didn't even think about it until you pointed it out.
Yeah, so instead of having just a new actor come in to play those roles, they're like, well, because your character doesn't really continue into the second part of the story,
you might as well play the second character.
But there are a few characters like Hamilton himself, like Burr, like Eliza and Angelica, who are just consistent throughout.
Right.
So and so like when I was first watching this, I was like, I didn't know which woman was sort of meant to marry Alexander Hamilton. I didn't know any of that. I'm just meeting these sisters. They do this incredible number with this amazing harmony between the three of them.
And I think this is the first time that we really see one of the coolest parts of the play, at least the version they had on Broadway, which was the spinning little.
Yeah. So if you watch like the actual live version, like the stage version, they have on Broadway. They have this amazing spinning stage with these different sections, and that the girls really do use in like sort of the choreography of the dance, with all that going on around them too. This is also setting up that Aaron Burr's introducing us to them, that there are these couple of rich girls, like their father's loaded. Take Philip Schuyler, the man is loaded. When now they're sneaking into the city to watch all the guys that work, and that's kind of like the riff of the song. But it's also, like some dialogue is exchanged here, in particular between Eliza and Angelica, where he goes, tell me, Angelica, what are we looking for? And Angelica says, I'm looking for a mind at work. I'm looking for somebody who can match me, because we find out Angelica is like incredibly brilliant.
She says, like, basically, can we include women in the second version of the
yes, because they're talking about like new ideas in the air, like new this new revolution. But then Peggy's talking about how like there's soldiers, there's going to be violence, there's going to be war. So there's like it's capturing this idea of like there's this great excitement, there's all this change going on in the world, but on the other hand, it's like it could mean that we're all going to die, or we could mean that our family could be crushed, or things like that. And also, we hope, and then the idea that these were new ideas about like, well, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal. Well, what about women?
Exactly.
Right?
It makes it very clear that they're very smart people.
They're very smart people. But it's also capturing the time, like the excitement of that generation at that time.
Right.
Who's going to war? Who's going to revolution? What did that mean?
But also, the idea of this is the one time in our lives where we're going to be able to decide the rules of the new generation, almost.
Right. Well, they're actively taking part in history. And that's one of my favorite lines in this track is history is happening in Manhattan right now. We just happen to be in the greatest city in the world, city in the world. What an amazing time to be alive. And I feel like every time I hear this song, I'm just like, I feel like that's captured. You get the story of it, but it's also just like kind of this anthem that I think would always ring true in New York City, like it's the greatest city in the world, people at work, people like knew it's always at
even back then they knew that New York was going to be New York.
Yeah, like I don't know. Yes, they did. But maybe not I don't know if they could envision what it would become exactly,
but they understood that it was going to be where all this important stuff happens.
Yeah, well, it definitely was. It was definitely very much at the center of that revolution, and so that all gets set up here. But there's also like there's some stuff in here with Burr where we're finding out that the Schuyler sisters know Aaron Burr, and he's like, I'm a trust fund baby, you can trust me, and
he's just hitting on them basically.
He's hitting on them, but he's making fun of them, talking about how, oh, look at you rich kids, you love to come down here to the slums and hang out with all the poor kids and act like you're looking for an urchin that will give you ideals, and kind of pointing at the hypocrisy of how wealthy and privileged people sometimes do that, or do latch on to the wanting to be bohemian in a sense, right? So love this track. It's like it definitely was. It's one of like my favorite to just get like this energy into the show and gets these women characters introduced in a really fun way.
And then we have Angelica and Eliza again. I want to talk about is another recurring theme. There are so many recurring themes in the show, and this is just like the fourth one.
This is the fifth song of the show.
Angelica, Eliza.
Angelica, Eliza, and like and musically that their names will keep being brought back from this one. Less so Peggy. This is kind of Peggy's only real song.
No, I don't think she even appears after this point.
No, she's not significant, but 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 I think if it was just Angelica and Eliza, the song wouldn't work as well.
Wouldn't work. It's this show is surprisingly comedic for what it is. Everything's legal in New Jersey.
Yeah, everything's legal in New Jersey, which is, I think, because I think New Jersey had legalized pot before New York did, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, the next song, "Farmer Refuted," is an interesting one. It's about this British guy who's like, I'm loyal to the king.
Hear ye, Bury, and I present free thoughts on the proceedings of the Continental Congress. Heed not the rebel who screams revolution. They have not your interest at heart.
God, tear this dude apart.
Chaos and bloodshed are not a solution.
So it's like this guy.
I
who
love
I
how
think is,
punchable this holier than thou asshole is.
What's interesting about this is that I think for me is because this character, this Samuel Seabury, who's like, I'm not against, I don't want to go to war with the king, and I don't want this revolution. And that he represents not just like, I think it's
not
sometimes
just him. There was a good amount of people who wanted that,
a lot of people who didn't want war, didn't want any kind of conflict, didn't want to break with Britain at all. And Canada is largely filled up with people who were already here or were already who fled what's now the United States and came up here because they wanted to be loyal to the British Empire. So in some ways, this guy kind of represents our ancestors or other loyalists from.
Even though we would end up breaking away too at some point.
Well, but in a very different fashion.
In a very different fashion. I know that, but yeah.
Yeah, Canada. Eventually, Britain just got tired of us, and we're like, whatever, go, and so we got responsible government. Whereas with the United States, they did it by force. They did it by war, by revolution. And
I just don't think we had the required the peril that the America was in, though. Canada.
Well, I think it's all relative. Like, I think that there were Nova Scotia, was very close to becoming one of the 14 colonies. They would have been the 14th colony to break away and become part of the. And if that they were the only reason that really didn't happen was because their port was a little closer to the British
Canada.
Navy, and they couldn't. That didn't happen, but. It wouldn't have taken much for history to go differently, and Nova Scotia, and therefore you and I and anybody else from Nova Scotia
we would be American.
We'd be Americans. History would have been different. We wouldn't even know this, but it's I think the Samuel Seabury is kind of thing, but then the counterpoints from Hamilton, he's like, well, what about the Boston Massacre? What about this and this and this? As he kind of refutes the farm.
Right, and I think that's an interesting point to bring up is that the Boston Massacre, they fired on innocents, basically.
Right, you talk about Boston and all that we've lost and everything else, and so there's like this debate is, I think, well captured in this song, that it wasn't. Some people were more like him, like didn't want to fight at all. Some people were like Burr, were kind of waiting to see which way the wind was going to blow, and it's always better to be on the side of the victor in any kind of conflict, and then people were like Hamilton and Washington and the rest, who were like, yes, we have to fight, we have to get independence from Britain for whatever reason, which then comes over to our next song, which is You'll Be Back by Jonathan Groff.
I love King George, sorry.
You say the price of my love is not a price that you're willing to pay. You cry.
And it's kind of done in this like frame of like an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right.
I love he's literally spitting. I love this performance so much.
Yeah, so this is Jonathan Groff, who went on to be in like Mine Hunter and many other things. Yeah, but he comes in as King George and just a couple of songs throughout the show, kind of sprinkled in, where he's laughing at them. He's like, "What do you mean?" Like, I didn't know. He talks later on George Washington stepping down. Is that something you could do? Like.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have again another comeback point, which is what is it? Ocean's Rise, Empire's Fall.
Oh, yeah, I think it maybe here.
Oh, don't change the subject, 'cause you're my favorite subject. My sweet, submissive subject. My royal subject. You'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war. For your love, for your praise, and I'll love you till my dying days. When you're gone, I'll go mad.
I don't think I got the exact line of the song you were looking for, but
Oceans
yeah.
rise, empire fall, and then he continues with that.
Yeah, but I will remind you of my love. I will kill your friends and family to remind you of my love.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what he keeps saying. It creates like this villainly backdrop here, which is amazing, but it's also kind of just done for comedic effects. So
yeah, obviously he's
Right.
supposed to be this hilarious asshole.
Right. Yeah. Just this ridiculous, and he comes out like all done up in the kingly stuff and how ridiculous it all is. And okay. Then the next one is Right Hand. It's called Right Hand Man. This is the one that starts off with like British Admiral Howe's got troops on
This,
the
I believe,
water.
introduces Washington.
It does. Yeah. This song introduces George Washington and also Hamilton and all those guys like fighting. It's like got the whole like rise up and all this.
But the elephant is in the room. Second.
So understand, rise up. If they tell my story, I am either gonna die on the battlefield in glory or rise up. I will fight for this land, but there's only one man who can give us a command so we can rise up. Understand, it's the only way to rise up. Rise up. Here he comes.
Here comes the general. Ladies and gentlemen.
Here comes the general.
The moment you've been waiting for.
Here comes the general.
The pride of Mount Vernon.
Here comes the general.
George Washington.
You get the whole George Washington introduction.
Who is he played by? Do you know the name
Christopher
of the
Jackson.
Yeah, okay. I really like his performance as Washington here. He embodies all of the importance and knowledge that people think of Washington as.
Well, I think he's like the way that he portrays them, the way he's written, he's definitely like I think a baritone or a deeper tenor has to always play this part. It's meant to be commanding, tall, strong, sort of larger
Washington
than life.
basically comes out and he says, "We're fucked unless we get someone really good. I need someone who can."
The song goes on to explain that like that they are sort of have their backs against the wall, like they're retreating, and that they're not winning the war. They're having to retreat. There's references to Brooklyn. There's references to Harlem. There's in the Battery. So this is a show that you're watching in New York City if you're watching it on Broadway, and it's very much referencing New York City landmarks, and that this was very much where the war was happening, and that it's it wasn't off in some far off place. It was right here.
It was right where you are standing,
or where you're watching the show hundreds of years later. And how it also kind of tells the story of how Hamilton kind of got noticed, how he steals these cannons from the British when they're not looking, and that there's kind of all that other setup. The song goes on to like then introduce like Burr to Washington, where Burr's like, hey, I was working under General Montgomery in Quebec until he caught a bullet in the neck in Quebec, and etc. But how we kind of see how that Washington's not too impressed with Burr, because Burr's like, oh, I think I got some ideas for you, and he's
but
like,
then
get out of here. And then
he-
Hamilton comes in. He goes, hey, do you know Hamilton? He goes,
Burr.
they go, yeah, we keep meeting each other, right? So it's another meeting between Burr and Hamilton, and how. I think Burr's like, I'm here. I'm working with you. I do everything right. And Hamilton, who's more impulsive and who is more doesn't come from like this great
Burr thinks
background.
he is what Hamilton actually is, and I think that's why Washington kind of sees him as, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm kind of, you can go for now.
Right. But we also find out, like Washington challenges Hamilton quite a bit in their introduction. He's like, "Why are you so angry?" He goes, "I'm not." He goes, "Yeah, you are. It's okay, but you got a hunger and you remind me of myself in some ways."
And then does this introduce that next one where he says, who tells your story? Or no, it's not.
No, it's not that. No, that comes later. That comes later. Okay. But no, this song is all about like them coming together. The war is on. They're fighting. It's Washington and Hamilton and Burr meeting. It's kind of like just creating that whole relationship between them, and the fact and how Hamilton sort of made his bones, because he was this guy, but he was like, I got Lafayette, I got Mulligans, I got whatever. I can help you do things, and how basically Hamilton ends up as Washington's not secretary, but basically almost like an assistant, his adjutant, versus like Burr, who goes on to become a colonel, and have his own command. And for a long part of the show, and
then they meet each other, right? And they say, "I wish I was in your position.
I wish I had your." Yeah, he says that in a later song. He's like, "I wish I had your command instead of manning George's journal." Burr
wants the power, but
Burr would rather be, I think, close to. I think he would trade places with Hamilton. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. And I think vice versa. I think Hamilton would just rather be out there,
someone who was a general,
troops, so but they're especially with Hamilton, he's exactly where he needs to be, learning from George Washington. Doesn't really know that yet, but
right.
So that's Right Hand Man. That's all setting that up. We go then to A Winter's Ball, which is
how does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore, go on and on, grow into more of a phenomenon? Watch this obnoxious, arrogant, loudmouth bother be seated at the right hand of the Father.
So this is all kind of explaining how Hamilton, who again doesn't come from any kind of important family or money or anything like that, he's
the second part, right?
And it's also setting up, the song also kind of really sets up the fact that Hamilton and Burr, the main thing they do have in common is that they're very successful with the ladies, that they like to get the girls and womanize and mess around, and so they like that. These two love to party together, and they have that in common at this point in their life, right? A Winter's Ball,
You could marry a sister, your rich son. Is it a question of if Burr or which one?
Because and Burr says this: if you could marry like a Schuyler sister,
you're set for life.
You could be you could completely raise your status. And I think that, and Alexander's like, yeah, I think I want to go for that. I'm not throwing away my shot. Which then leads into the next song, which is Helpless, which is a great romantic song.
And I got
this is a fantastic song in its own right. I listen to this song all the time.
I really like the way it portrays romance. I think it does a great job of that.
Yeah, well, this song is all about the Schuyler sisters, more so about how Eliza's very taken with Alexander, how she falls in love with him through the scene, how Angelica introduces them, right? Which will then we get that kind of brought back up in Satisfied, which is the next song, which is all from Angelica's point of view, how she would have rather married Alexander, and how she was in love with him, but she also saw that her sister was maybe a better match, and she really loved him. And that's
she kind of is honorable enough to make it happen,
right? This song is like it goes from like this love story to him eventually proposing, and then them having the wedding itself, and the wedding march plays, and then it says, in New York you can be a new man, coming back to that same theme, which is how the song ends. This song is amazingly good. But it's maybe even better because the next song is Satisfied, which is the actual wedding reception.
The same thing.
It's the same thing, but it's different. It starts off with the toast from what's his name? The friend. Adam, no, his friend. John Adams? No.
All right,
John
all
Lawrence, sorry.
right. That's what I'm talking about. Now, everyone, give it up for the maid of honor, Angelica Schuyler.
A toast to the groom.
And so this song is all from Angelica,
Right.
about how she gives this toast, but then it goes into like rewind, and then we get this whole section where she explains of like how she first met Alexander and how they kind of he points out to her, you're never satisfied. I'm never satisfied either. I'm always, because they're brilliant people. They're always thinking, they're always working, and they never really stop. And they recognize this in each other, and Angelica tells us this story here, but ultimately, decides that it's not right for her or for him or for her sister,
Whatever. Yeah.
but that would have been, if she could have had her way, then she would have married him, but she also talks about these family pressures. She talks about being the oldest girl and having a brother, which isn't true. That Angelica Schuyler actually did have older brothers, and they're like some of these things are a little bit liberalized or changed a little bit for the story, but actually the other truth in real life was that Angelica Schuyler was already married by the time she met Alexander Hamilton. So but that
does she have an interest in?
She might have. I think there was some innuendo that they picked up from some letters, and where we hear like later on, you left a comma out of a letter.
All right, yeah, that's right.
Debating the finer points of punctuation. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been like this love triangle or sort of like this dynamic to this at all. And so that's kind of explained here. So Satisfied really shows off whoever who plays Goldsberry plays the original Angelica. I really love this one. And then we go into the story of tonight,
the reprise,
which is more like a toast here from the guys.
I may not live to see our glory.
I may not live to see our glory.
But I've seen wonders great and small.
I've seen wonders great and small.
Because if the tomcat can get married,
if Alexander can get married,
there's hope for RS after all.
Just kind of the dig at Hamilton.
Yeah. Right. And we missed it in the earlier song, but the fact that Alexander Hamilton's Martha Washington named her feral tomcat after him because
that's right. That's true.
That's true. It's actually not true, but it's which is what's so funny about that. But just like, but if the tomcat can't get married, and the guys are happy that there's kind of like the end of this. A little bit of this story. We're in the middle of the war, but then the war kind of keeps going. The story of tonight, though, is followed by the Wait For It song, which is maybe my favorite song in the entire show, which is the story of Aaron Burr.
I'm keeping the bed warm while her husband is away. He's on the British side in Georgia. Trying to keep the colonies in line, but he can keep all of Georgia. Theodosia, she's mine.
That's right.
Love doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, I'll tell you why this is one of my favorites, because it really gives us one of the first glimpses in the show into the mind of Aaron Burr. The fact that he talks about the differences between him and Hamilton. That he's like, Hamilton doesn't hesitate. He doesn't slow down. He's got nothing to lose. He's got everything to prove. And Aaron Burr feels exactly the opposite, where he talks about his parents having died at a young age. The fact that he has only legacy to protect. He has got everything to lose and nothing is much to gain. Right. And that whereas Hamilton won't wait for it, he will not throw away a shot. He's going to wait for it. He's going to wait for his moment.
Then we have probably my favorite line actually from the show, which is, history does not discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes.
And we laugh and we cry and we break and we make our mistakes. And if there's a reason, I'm by your side, because the song's also about his love for this woman,
Right.
Theodosia, who's this married woman,
was married to a British officer.
right? But it's and just musically, how this song is crafted is amazingly smart. The fact that like it makes you wait for it in different parts in the song. You anticipate sort of beats that don't come.
Happen.
Just from a songwriting point of view, it's maybe my favorite song. It's maybe in the show. It's maybe because Burr is our villain, our antagonist, and yet he's very sympathetic.
He's very sympathetic,
and he's very. You understand sort of where he's coming from and what in his. It's not even just jealousy of Alexander Hamilton. It's more like this, like he has to justify to himself, why am I the way I am? I choose to be this Hamilton way, and I know I do this for certain reasons. I choose. I could be like Hamilton, but I'm not because of this and this and this, right? And so that I like. Where are we only on? We're on the 13th track. We're still only in Act 1. I'm like, there's friggin' so many great songs in this, This be no exception. Maybe my favorite. Then we go to Stay Alive, which is more about the war and more about like the fact that Alexander's off at the front lines and Washington and all them. And this is more like Eliza, like stay alive, stay alive. We see here that things going badly, sometimes in the war, people criticizing Washington.
Don't engage, strike by night.
All right, and this is also about the people insulting Washington. Everyone was like saying like, well, Washington is not the good general, and there's kind of infighting amongst the American rebels during this, and Washington's like, don't worry about it. Don't, to Hamilton and the rest, don't worry about whatever they say about me. It doesn't really matter. But Lawrence and Hamilton are like, no, we're not putting up with this shit. And then we get the 10 dual commandments, which is
the first pistol duel.
It's the 10 dual commandments. Number 1.
So who's this between again?
So it's between Lauren in the show. It's between Lawrence and this other guy who criticized Washington, General Lee.
Right, that's right.
Right, but it's also because ultimately the story of Alexander Hamilton ends in a duel. It's also really setting up how do duels work. What are the rules of duels? Why are they what they are? This also comes up again for Hamilton's son, who also dies in a duel.
Right.
Like number 1, you meet the challenge demands satisfaction. If they apologize, no need for further action.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 2, if they don't, grab a friend. That's your second. Your lieutenant when there's reckoning to be reckoned. Number 3,
which is basically the person who decides who won.
No, you get a buddy. Everybody, 2 guys got a beef. Each guy gets a buddy, and then you send in your seconds and see if they can negotiate a peace. Right. So in the show, Lee's second is Burr, but that's not really what happens.
That's not really what. But of course, it helps for the sake of.
It helps for the sake of this story,
right?
And that the Burr would be helping out Lee here, and so and he's. They try to negotiate, and then Hamilton's like, "No, your guys insulted George Washington and said that everything's going." And how many guys died because of Lee? And so they're like, "Okay, we're doing this." Right. Leave a note. Tell them where you've been. Pray that heaven hell lets you in. Yeah. 7. Confess your sins. Ready for the moment of adrenaline when you finally face your opponent. And so the seconds go in, and then finally. When it's done, look him in the eye, aim no higher, summon all the courage you require, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, number 10 paces, boom, and that's the end of the song. And it's just it's I think even though it's set in a time, even though duels aren't really commonplace today, there's definitely like gang violence, street violence, things that are definitely part of even hip hop rap culture, things that get put into a lot of songs that I think they're kind of tying this back to, and how men in particular need to pound their chest and sometimes, go kill each other to prove that what they're a man. right?
Yeah, that's
So
interesting. Yeah.
then we get "Meet Me Inside" next, which is the song where George
It's the
Washington
first
basically,
time that, you know, Hamilton really gets in trouble with
right? Which,
Washington.
With me, but believe me, these young men don't speak for me. Thank you for your service.
Let's ride.
Hamilton, sir, meet me inside.
meet him inside. And you know, this is where Washington's like, you know, you're not helping matters. You know, I think because like there's also this juxtaposition that, you know, that Lee's a Southerner, right? Lee is probably a slave owner.
Which of course Washington also was.
Washington also won too, yes, but
he
the
brings
fact-
up, he's like, I'm also from Virginia, boy.
yeah, he says that, you know, and how Washington Lawrence don't like these guys, but he's like, hey, listen, like I'm from there too, man. I'm a Southerner, and Washington points out like we need them. You know, we need the Southerners. We have to be together as a people if we're going to fight the British. If we're fighting each other, this is no good. And ultimately, at the end of the song, he will send Hamilton home. You know, and he says, "Get out of here." You know, that's an order from your commander, which will come back.
Which will come back a couple times
in the show. Then we get "That Would Be Enough," which is that's what Alexander does. He goes home to Eliza. And this song, this idea of "that would be enough" kind of gets
comes back a lot.
Look around, look at where you are, look at where you started. The fact that you're alive is a miracle. Just stay alive, that would be enough.
Just stay alive, that would be enough. Forget, like, you don't need a legacy. You don't need to prove anything to the world. You really, at the end of the day, we're having a baby. This is where you should be focusing, you know, like, and that's all I want from you. I don't need you to be this big, successful, whatever. You know, I just need you. That would be enough. If you just loved me and loved the family and appreciated that you're alive and that you have things. Which I think does resonate with him in you know, and he does accept a lot of that, but on the other hand, he can't help but who he is. How driven
I
he
just
is.
think it's very interesting. It's like Hamilton is kind of the person who would rather almost sacrifice his family and being with them over
Right. Yes. Well, yeah, you're right. And then he does make these choices. You know, this song, "That Would Be Enough," is kind of riffed on later on, right before he goes to the duel with Aaron Burr, you know,
Right.
Best of Wives and Best of Women, you know, and they kind of say that would be enough, you know, and that's kind of their little thing that they say to each other, where it's just like, you know, forget all that, forget all that noise and distraction. At the end of the day, we don't need all that. That's not the most important thing. But he doesn't always hear that lesson. That's kind of one of his other character flaws. But really like that one. Then we get "Guns and Ships," which brings us back to the Revolution, brings us back to the war. This is more about Lafayette. You know, this is kind of his song where he's like, "I'm everyone's confusing the British henchmen. Everyone give it up to America's favorite fighting Frenchman."
Right. It's about all of his friends really and what they are doing on the war front.
How do we emerge? Weapon, an immigrant, you know and love who's unafraid to step in. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchmen. Everyone give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman.
I'm taking this horse by the reins, making red coats weather with blood stains. And I'm never gonna stop until I make them drop, burn them up and scatter the remains down. Watch me engaging them, escaping them, and rating them out. I go to France for more fun. I come back with more guns
and ships.
And so the balance shifts.
But throughout the rest of the song,
I will say that the rapping in this album is so good that it makes you disappointed, at least for me, who knows about it, is disappointed in modern rap because it could be this good.
You know, it's really good. David Diggs plays Lafayette, he plays Jefferson later on in the show. You know, he's a great actor. He's in Star Trek now. He's one of the voices on Star Trek Prodigy. and so I don't know. I'm a big fan of his. He's also been on the show Snowpiercer, the Netflix version of it. And he does some amazing vocal work in this with this character, with these lyrics in a French accent, no less.
She's not French,
right? But also it bringing back the fact that the song is also about Lafayette, saying like, hey, if we're gonna win this, we're gonna need Hamilton back. We need Hamilton. He's your right hand man. You need your right hand man back. And he, and so he's like, he knows. And so this is about how Washington will kind of forgive Hamilton, recall him, and bring him back.
Right.
Which brings us to the next song, History Has Its Eyes on You, where this is where
what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The words that Washington gives to Hamilton.
I was younger than you are now when I was given my first command. I led my men straight into a massacre. I witnessed their deaths firsthand.
Good song, really good song. I really love this. This is basically where Washington is trying to be more of a father figure to Hamilton, and say like, well, I used to be like you, but it can all end when you're a commander, you can lose it all instantly. Like all these lives, all this blood on your conscience can become an instant reality.
Right.
But history has its eyes on you. We're living history. They knew that at least, and then that's really kind of what it's about.
When I was young and dreamed of glory, you have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
That's probably my other favorite line from that. You glory, you have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story.
And that's kind of how the show ends, is that, and it's also the story. It's the story of Alexander Hamilton, but it's also the story of Aaron Burr, because it's also like he can be looked at as history's the history's great villains, but it's all about perspective too.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the most iconic things people like. One of the most iconic lines is history is written by the winners.
Right. And which is a good segue to the next track, which is the Battle of Yorktown. The world turned upside down, which is kind of when they really defeat the British. This song is all about them winning the war, at the Battle of Yorktown.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a great song, really high energy. I run to this song a lot. I really like the moment with Hamilton where he's basically giving a speech saying, we have to go back to our children. This is what we're going to do. He's basically just rallying themselves up, but he's also kind of talking to himself, realizing where he is. Yeah, well, he's like, I got to win this war. Got to get back home. Got to meet my son. Is definitely a part of it. Like we need to get on with the rest of history, because that's a big part of it. And we get more lines here from Hamilton. I'm not throwing away my shot. Just like my country, I'm young, scrappy, and hungry. That's part of the song too. And then we also get like we hear the drinking song they're singing, build up there, and then how he ends it like got to start a new nation, got to meet my son. There's we won. So that's really all the song is, like we won the war, right? Which gives us now the what comes next, which is our next King George song.
They say the price of my war's not a price that they're willing to pay. Insane.
But he also says, like, you're gonna find out governing is a lot harder than fighting, right? Winning a war.
There's the sense that even though he is an asshole, he's right, and he's right, and it's gonna.
He has a point. That this is not as simple as
it looks.
Just winning, right? I think they know that too, but he's like it. So that gets pointed out. And then we get the next song, which is Dear Theodosia, which is about the birth of Aaron Burr's daughter, Theodosia, but also about the birth of Alexander Hamilton's son. What's his son's name? I'm trying to remember.
Forget.
Is it John? I can't remember now.
Here, let me look it up.
Philip. Sorry. Philip Hamilton, right? But this is also like a beautifully crafted song. So nice.
Dear Theodosia, what to say to you? You have my eyes, you have your mother's name.
But it's also really about how there's like this parallel between Hamilton and Burr. They're both having their first child around this time, and how
kind of what I love
it's changing them as
about
men.
Part of what I love about this so much is it shows all the differences between Hamilton and Burr, but it also shows really how similar they are at their cores.
Right, and they bring that together with them like coming in together as a harmony in this song.
The world's safe and sound for you. We'll come of age with our young nation. We'll bleed and fight for you. We'll make it right for you. If we lay a strong enough foundation, we'll pass it on to you. We'll give the world to you, and you'll blow us all away. Someday.
Is this the end of Act 1?
Pretty much. There's one song that comes after this. But the whole like, and you'll blow us all someday. You're gonna blow us all away, which is a song that comes in Act 2. Blow us all away. You know, I used to hear my dad say that one day I would blow us all away. But yeah, and then the next song is Nonstop. This is the end of Act 1. And it's basically about it's really just giving us an explanation of what happens with Burr and Hamilton. It's like after the war, I went back to New York, and so did Hamilton, and worked right next, and even would collaborate on cases together.
This is the song that starts. Why are you writing one like you're always running out of time, right?
Why do you write? You're running out of time.
Yeah.
We also see here that Burr is a better lawyer than Hamilton in a lot of ways.
We know that, but we also see that this, like, we know Hamilton's going to die. They explain that at the beginning of the story, but really now they're starting to build up everything around that, I feel like. Well,
and just like how Hamilton is nonstop. That's kind of like nonstop is really him, you know. He's always he's just this big ball of ambition, but he's also not very pragmatic. He's not very practical, you know. He starts giving out this whole speech to the jury. There is no jury yet. Like he's like, you know, like all you have to do is this. Like there's procedures to being a lawyer, to being in court. Burr is calm, collected. He's going to wait for it. He's going to take his time. He's going to be smart about it. And
Hamilton kind of goes off the rails.
Hamilton is impatient. Hamilton's impulsive. Hamilton is driven. Hamilton is a hard worker.
That's a good thing, but not for a lawyer.
Well, yeah, it's not, you know, where I think he asked for his help here, right?
I have found a wealthy husband.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
Interesting to think. I did not know that.
It's not like Washington became the president right away. That didn't happen until probably 10 years later. So there's this whole 10-year period here where America is kind of not really a country yet. Each state is kind of.
They're trying to figure out, you know.
They're trying to figure out what they want to be, because even though they had worked together to win independence, it wasn't necessarily clear to them that they were going to all unite as a country right away. So they had to write their constitution, but that's why you also get the amendments later on, because there was all the things they forgot to add, and all these things. And this is where Hamilton's asking for help from Burr, you know, and Burr's like, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to like defend this thing or try to fight for this thing and then lose. What if I'm backing the wrong horse? You know, so that shows how Burr doesn't have the courage. Burr doesn't have conviction. He doesn't have,
he doesn't
believe in anything
what he believes in. He fights for what's gonna.
He fights for himself. He fights for himself only. He works for himself. Whereas Hamilton is more thinking about more than him, you know? right? He's thinking about everybody. So that's, and then we also, the end of the song kind of gives us this whole thing here with like Angelica has married this guy in England and she kind of still pines for him, is also kind of where we go into act 2. So that's the whole first disc or first half of the album. Took us an hour and 11 minutes to get here.
Huge way through it.
We went through a lot, but there's still more to go. We know this is a double album, so if you're still with us at this point, we appreciate you. Jumping into the second half here of the Hamilton a musical. So we're into Act 2. We'll try to get through this as succinctly as we can.
Yeah.
Which
what
takes
did
us.
I miss?
What did I miss?
Yeah, we get introduced to
17.
1789. How does the bastard, orphan, immigrant, decorated war vet unite the colonies through more debt? Fight the other founding fathers till he has to forfeit. Have it all, lose it all. You ready for more yet? Treasury Secretary, Washington's the president. Every American experiment sets a precedent. Not so fast, someone came along to resist him. Pissed him off until we had a two-party system.
Which this is all about the introduction of Thomas Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
What did I miss? You haven't met him yet. You haven't had the chance because he's been kicking ass as the ambassador to France. Right. And we get this Thomas Jefferson introduction, who is played by David Diggs, just like he played Lafayette in the first half, but he plays this character very differently.
Very cool.
Thomas Jefferson's coming home, Lord. He's been off in Paris for so long.
Then the world still spins. I have Lafayette draft a declaration. Then I said I gotta go. I gotta be in Monticello. Now the work at home begins. So what did I miss?
Which is, I love this. It's a really fun number.
Yeah.
What did I miss? And then he's setting up here. Thomas Jefferson will be the great antagonist, even more so in some ways than Aaron Burr to Hamilton.
He's definitely set up as more villainous.
Yeah, and I think that they tried, much like all these characters, that they were all imperfect people. Like Thomas Jefferson, definitely a slave owner, definitely was guilty of many things, but also was one of the great intellectuals of his time. Was revered by.
I wish people considered that more. Is that we think of a person doing something bad and we only think of that, but we also need to think about the good things they did as well. We need to think of.
Well, I think that, and we see here that Thomas Jefferson, kind of a good guy, but also kind of a bad guy, kind of a jerk, kind of we see how him,
Madison,
but him and Madison, but it depends if you want to look at it but if you looked at it from their perspective, you might look at Hamilton as a villain, because Hamilton was trying to do Hamilton was more friendly with England, because again, is explaining like Hamilton and the Federalists, which was Hamilton and John Adams and a few other people, they were more friendly towards England. They wanted to keep more ties to England. And whereas Jefferson and the rest of them, they were more pro France. They were like, we're not going to be working with England. We're not going to be doing this nonsense with them anymore. It all had to do with their financial systems and how they wanted more decentralization of federal power. It's kind of the same argument.
Next part, actually.
Yeah. Which brings us into our cabinet battle number 1.
Entertainingly enough, I really love the idea of it taking the form of a rap battle.
Well, it's a lot of fun. What's interesting too, because before George Washington, during his first term, there weren't really political parties yet. There are political parties are going to form kind of because of this divide initially between Hamilton and Jefferson, more than anything. But at the time, Jefferson and Hamilton were both working under the same president, Washington,
right?
Where with Hamilton as the Treasury Secretary. And
what I thought was really interesting too is that the person who lost the presidency for the first few, lost the race. He became
no one ran against Washington.
Yeah, no, I know that, but in the next one, is that like the loser would become VP.
Oh, the runner-up is the vice president.
Yeah, which is
Right.
not how it works anymore.
No, that they change. They say that right in the show,
Yeah.
right? That because, but you gotta remember, campaigning wasn't a thing yet. Like Aaron Burr in the show, it's kind of shown that Aaron Burr invented the idea of going door to door and campaigning, but that was considered to be not tasteful. That was considered to be like that's not what a true leader wouldn't need to like go around convincing people to vote for him. People would just vote for him, right? Because he's the best. Everyone would know that, or most people would know that. He wouldn't have to tell anybody that. That wouldn't
I
be.
think obviously, we think that's a little silly nowadays, but
Of course, now, but at the time they were looking at
time,
Aaron Burr.
yeah, no, I know.
It's kind of like kind of a shifty, kind of a that would be being a sleazy move, right? And so then that's why Thomas Jefferson's like, why would I want you to be my vice president when you were already campaigning against me? Right. That's not what when they designed the system of like the runner-up becomes vice president, they weren't thinking of campaigning yet. There wasn't it. So once it becomes a thing, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. The whole rap battle here.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in New York City.
Where George Washington is like the rap the battle master.
Mediator. Yeah.
You know? Some really good stuff.
The shoe fits wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it? Our debts are paid, I'm afraid. Don't tax the South, because we got it made in the shade. In Virginia, we plant seeds in the ground. We create. You just want to move our money around. This financial plan is an outrageous demand, and it's too many damn pages for any man to understand. Stand with me in the land of the free. Pray to God we never see Hamilton's candidacy. Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what gonna happen when you try to tax our whiskey.
I really love Hamilton's verse because he really rips into Jefferson.
Oh yeah, he's like, well, we all know who's doing the planting, you know.
Yeah.
Would you like to join us or stay mellow doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello? If we assume the debts the union gets, a new line of credit, a financial diuretic, how do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost, you'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver, hey neighbor, your debts are paid because you don't pay for labor. We plant seeds in the South, we create, they keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting.
But how contentious these two were with each other is well set up. You understand their different points of view, their different views on taxation, on money, on different things, but how Washington was going toe to toe with, again, Thomas Jefferson was considered to be a revered figure in America, right? As was George Washington and even Hamilton. But this is the beginning of real like politics, you know.
Right.
This is kind of the thing with democracy, is that you have to work out problems with people.
You have to argue. Well, and that kind of gets explained in a second, where they have to compromise. You have to compromise with your opponent.
You have to compromise. You have to work things out, which kind of brings us to our next song, which is "Take a Break," which is this is about Angelica coming home, to see the Hamiltons and to see her sister Eliza. It's also about where Hamilton talks about, he compares himself to Macbeth in the song. He's like, they think I'm Macbeth, ambition's my folly, and Angelica writes back and says, you need to work with Jefferson. You need to sit down and compromise. You need to figure things out. So yeah, you're right. Like, that is how politics has to work, right? And everything else. And Hamilton trying to come to terms with that, because he's not Macbeth. He's not a king. He can't just make it that way.
You can't just, which is obviously a good thing, but
but also musically, I love this number. I think it's got some amazing harmonies here with the two Schuyler sisters again, the Eliza and thing, But we also get to meet his son Philip, and this whole like Eliza teaching French.
Of course, this would come back.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine.
So that will come back later on when Philip dies. Like
right? I was going to say it gets really tragic later on.
But there's also this whole other harmony in the song.
Alexander coming.
Skylar sister, hi.
Tell this man,
John Adams, upstate.
Alexander, I came all this way. She came all this way. All this way. Take a break.
You know I have to get my plan through Congress.
Run away with us for the summer. Let's go upstate.
I lose my job if we don't get this plan through Congress.
All go stay with our father. There's a lake I know. It's your face. Screw your courage to the stinking plate. Take a break.
So they want him to go away.
Upstate New York.
Stop working. Come with us. We'll go to our father's home in upstate New York, and you can relax. But because of what we learned in the last song in the cabinet battle number 1, I think Washington says if you can't get your deal done, then I'm probably gonna ask for your resignation. You're probably gonna lose your job. You know, and I think that's looming over him. But then this is kind of like where we go into like the dark part of the story. Which is, you know, starts with Say No to This, which, you know, ultimately the Schuyler sisters and Philip and the other Hamilton children, they go off. And he ends up starting this affair with this mistress lady. And this is the song Say No to This. Where's that? Yeah, here it is.
Back home, she turned red. She led me to a bed, let her legs spread and said,
Stay.
I would say this is one of my least favorite songs in the show.
I'd say so too.
It's not. I get what it's trying. It's supposed to be kind of like this bad moment for our protagonist, and you know he gets.
I don't like that it frames that. It's like, yeah, I don't like the way it frames it. It frames it almost as if like he can't resist it.
Well, I think that is exactly what it is. I think that, you know, that's they're acknowledging that that's his character flaw. That he's like, you know, he's always got a thing for the women, you know, he likes, so he can't resist her. But then he then gets is this where he gets blackmailed?
pathetic, she cried.
They don't go much if you pay, you can stay.
I don't like this song.
Yeah,
yeah.
No, this is where it happens.
Yeah, he gets blackmailed by the husband and whatever, and all that's going on.
And this is obviously eventually going to be the downfall of him.
Right. But then we get this next song, which is The Room Where It Happens, which kind of brings us back to more to the politics. This is where
this is the final kind of resurging theme.
But this is, you know, and really gives this it's another Burr song, you know, where we get to, you know, he's like, he sees here where basically we see Hamilton makes this deal with Jefferson where he's like, okay, like you will let me have my new banking system and all this financial stuff I want to do. That
we'll move the capital
we'll move the capital to what's now called Washington, D.C., which is right near Virginia. So that, you know, because originally the capital was in New York City, or it would move around to Philadelphia.
But
it wasn't, you know,
basically, you know, they come to this situation where they got something nice, but he got what he wanted. He got what was important.
Right. And this is, you know, but this is what Burr goes crazy about. He's like, well, they made this impossible deal, and it was just the three of them in a room having dinner. You know, how is that democracy? How is that for the people? You know, it's kind of what Burr is also, but he's also just kind of jealous. You know, he wants to be in the action. He wants to be part of history.
The venue, the seating,
sacrificed in every game of chess. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Meanwhile, Madison is grappling with the fact that not every issue can be settled by committee.
It's a great song. It's definitely feels like you feel the plotting coming from Burr, you know. But it's on its own. The song stands like The Room Where It Happens. It's a catchy riff. It's good. I enjoy it. What do you think?
I really like this. Again, this brings our final recurring theme. I want to be in the room where it happens, which eventually becomes no one was in the room where it happened.
Right.
I do really like this song. I really like Burr's perspective, you know, and I just think it's really catchy.
You kind of get it.
Close your eyes. You wanna lead us to save the day. We don't get a say in what they trade away.
the longest songs in the show. It's 5 minutes and 19 seconds. Only Satisfied's a little longer.
Right.
And My Shot is
obviously, yeah.
But this is a big number in the show. A real turning point.
Yeah, again, like you said, this is really where things start to turn for Burr.
Well, this is where Burr, and this is like this. We go immediately to Schuyler Defeated, which is where Burr runs against Philip Schuyler, the father-in-law of Alexander Hamilton.
And this is really where their friendship breaks.
Their friendship breaks, yes. And this is true. This all happened.
Right.
You know, where he's like coming.
Look, Grandpa's in the paper. War hero Philip Schuyler loses Senate seat to young upstart Aaron Burr.
And he's like, well, what? And Burr, he's like, Hamilton's like, our friendship's over. And he's like, well, I don't see why we shouldn't be friends anymore. And he's like, well, you took my father-in-law's seat. And it was also because he says to Burr, like, when did you become a Democratic Republican? He's like, yesterday. They don't like you, and I'm going to run against you. Basically.
Create but upstate. Wait. People think you're crooked. The scholar seat was up for grabs, so I took it.
I've always considered you a friend.
I don't see why that has to
You
end.
changed parties to run against my father-in-law.
I changed parties to seize the opportunity I saw. I swear your pride will be the death of us all. Beware, it goeth before the fall.
So yeah, like he's like, I'm finally taking your advice. Like they kind of say, like, I'm trying to smile more and talk less, smile more, and but they're kind of crossing over in some ways,
a little bit.
You know, and they're coming apart. The next one is the second rap.
Second cabinet battle. Yep.
Cabinet battle. This is more about how they not supporting France and the fact that Hamilton doesn't want to go and help Lafayette, and you know Jefferson considers this very dishonorable because of whatever. But ultimately at the end of this, Washington will side with Hamilton.
The issue on the table. France is on the verge of war with England. Now, do we provide aid and troops to our French allies, or do we stay out of it? Remember, my decision on this matter is not subject to congressional approval. The only person you have to convince is me.
Yeah, which goes on.
His head, do whatever you want. I'm super dead. Enough. Hamilton is right.
Mr.
We're too
President.
fragile to start another fight.
But, sir, do we not fight for freedom?
Sure, when the French figure out who's gonna lead them.
The people are leading.
The people are rioting. There's a difference. Frankly, it's a little disquieting. You would let your ideals blind you to reality. Hamilton, sir, draft a statement of neutrality.
Did you forget Lafayette?
What?
Have you an ounce of regret?
You know, I would say that like I like this one a lot less than the first rap battle. It's more
Yeah, I agree with that.
it's more dialogue. It doesn't hold up as well as just a song. It's something you can just throw on. It's more story, and it's more like them talking to each other. And I don't like. It's almost like it doesn't even necessarily belong on the album. I get sometimes.
Almost.
You know. The next one is Washington on Your Side. You know,
This is the real kind of envy song. You know.
This is the one, well, like where they're like, well, wouldn't it be nice to have Washington on your side? You know, where they were kind of making fun of him that
Every action has an equal opposite reaction. Thanks to Hamilton, our cabinet's fractured into factions. Try not to crack under the stress. We're breaking down like fractions. We smack each other in the press, and we don't print retractions. Douse, you can't put it out from inside the house. I'm in the cabinet. I am complicit in watching him grabbing at power and kissing it. Washington isn't gonna listen to discipline dissidents. This is the difference. This kid is out. Oh, this immigrant isn't somebody we chose. Oh, this immigrant's keeping us all on our toes. Oh, let's show these federalists what they're up against. Oh, Southern motherfucking Democratic Republicans. Oh, now follow the money and see where it goes. Oh, because every second the treasury grows. Oh, if we follow the money and see where it leads, get in the weeds, look for the seeds of Hamilton's misdeeds.
so they decide that they're going to try to dig up dirt on Hamilton, whatever it is. The fact that he's becoming more powerful with the treasury, that he's got more influence than Jefferson does. And they're like, and they're going to be messing. And they also don't like that he's a Federalist, which is this other party at the time that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
We're the motherfucking Democratic Republicans. We're going to take you out here, you know,
Right.
And this immigrant isn't somebody we chose. They also resent that he's an immigrant. That even though
obviously now
they're all immigrants, like, but they're maybe less recently, I suppose.
Now, right? Like an immigrant can't be president, and maybe that's where that comes.
Not if you're foreign born.
Yeah.
But if you're if you're born outside the United States, but if you're born as an American, you can. It's kind of weird.
It's weird. But
anyway, so I like it musically, like the Washington on your side. It's not bad. Then we come to One Last Time, which is the song between Washington and Hamilton. So when Obama retired as president, like when his second term ended, Lin-Manuel Miranda and Christopher Jackson actually went to the White House and performed this song. But it's called One Last Time. This is where Washington decides, he's not going to run for a third term.
Right.
He's going to step down.
Which obviously set a precedent,
which was followed. Yeah. No president went beyond 2 terms until FDR nearly 200 years later,
which only happened because of World War II.
Yeah, and the Depression and a few other things.
Right.
So, but it was mostly World War II. Yeah. And so I think this song is really good. It's not my favorite, but you and
I, people say you're waiting to move them along. Why do you have to say it will make them afraid?
Well, the thing is,
in this nation
it's a goodbye to Washington, not just as a president,
but as a character in the show too.
As a character in the show, but also in life, because he only dies like 2 years after he leaves office.
Right. Yeah.
So it's also kind of a saying goodbye to him as a person.
Though I shall also carry with me to the dimensions of rest. One last time, the people will hear from me. One last time. And if we get this right, we're gonna teach them how to say goodbye. You and I.
So and then they, by the end of the song, they're like writing the final speech, which Hamilton helps him write. So
after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion. As I myself will soon be to the dimensions of rest.
I don't this is where the song kind of loses me a little bit, because I'm hearing this speech from the real George Washington,
right,
from 17
whatever,
or I guess 1798 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so it's, I think that the song is really good, the story is good, but then it gets into more of this historical stuff, which I find less engaging.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Because I don't think, but it's also because I think
it's good in the show, but in an album, not really.
Yeah, I don't think it works as well on the album. I agree with you there. But the song's not all bad either. Jane, Cheap and I. Oh, yes, Jane. Okay, and then number 10, I Know Him, which is I think the last song we get here from King George. Where he goes, I just heard George Washington stepping down.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was something you could do. But then he finds out, who did you pick? John Adams.
Right?
Yeah. Which is what where's it here? The I Know Him.
If so, who's next? There's nobody else in their country who looms quite as large. John Adams? I know him. That can't be. That's that little guy who spoke to me all those years ago. What was it? 85. That poor man, they're going to eat him alive.
Which is actually kind of true. So John Adams, who's one of the other founding fathers, the first vice president, and was the second president, and the father of a future president, John Quincy Adams, he was a Federalist, but like Hamilton, but he was not popular as a president. He had a lot of issues, and he was a man of smaller stature, as well. But was a very influential person in his own right. So yeah, so I don't know, like it's an interesting thing. Then we get this, like the next song is called The Adams Administration, which is like Burr kind of is setting up here that this is a period under John Adams that's
Do we even
kind
get
of
to see Adams in this movie?
huh?
Do we even see him in this movie?
No, we never get John Adams like as a character. Like he's just talked about.
All right.
You know, he was played by who played him? What's that guy's name? Jesus. Sorry, I can't remember now. There was like a whole mini series. Man, it's killing me. But who played John Adams? But yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but you should check that one out.
Right.
The Adams Administration.
Welcome, folks, to the Adams Administration. Jefferson's the runner-up, which makes him the vice president.
Washington can't help you now, no more Mr. Nice President.
Adams fires Hamilton, privately calls him Creole bastard in his taunts.
Say what?
Hamilton publishes his response.
Sit down, John, you fat mother.
So yeah, but they're like, look at this Hamilton guy, like he's just like because Adams was the only other major member of the Federalist Party who had any like significant influence. It's kind of like he kind of destroyed the entire party in that move, in the movement of it at least. And so yeah, this is a tough time. We go to We Know, which is when like it's like Madison and Jefferson, they confront Hamilton that we know about you've been paying off this man or whatever.
We think you're embezzling.
We think you're embezzling from the treasury, you know, we know.
I hope you save some money for your daughter and son.
Your best one, run back where you come from.
Ha! You don't even know what you're asking me to confess. You have nothing, I don't have to tell you anything at all. Unless if I can prove that I never broke the law, do you promise not to tell another soul?
And this is where he reveals, yeah, I've been paying off this woman. I've been paying off her husband.
This is Burr's real villain moment, right?
Well, him and Jefferson and Madison, you know.
Right.
And I think in real life, it was like another future president was involved too. Someone who came after Madison.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just like where they're using this dirt. He's like, well, if I can prove to you that I'm not actually committing any crimes, will you back down? They're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll never tell anybody, but they totally do, and they totally use this against him. And it you know,
it's also kind of Hamilton's mistake because he doesn't take the leather back.
Right, you know, he really plays this poorly in terms of any kind of politics of it. But we know about your dirty secret. We get the next song is Hurricane, which I really love. You know, like this is where he's kind of talking about the metaphor of a hurricane from his native island, but also, you know, just that this storm is coming, and in the eye of a hurricane, there's quiet for just a moment.
A yellow sky. When I was 17, a hurricane destroyed my town. I didn't drown. I couldn't seem to die. I wrote my way out. Wrote everything down far as I could see. Into existence, and when my prayers to God were met with indifference, I picked up a pen, I wrote my own deliverance. In the eye of a hurricane, there is quiet. Just a moment, a yellow sky.
Really good melody. I really enjoyed the song. You know, and it kind of
I really do like this album. This song. I like how it kind of, he knows what's coming.
He knows that there's a storm coming. He knows that it's shit's about, you know, but he's like, this is the quiet right before the storm. Yeah. You know, just like a real hurricane.
What be my favorite song?
The Reynolds pamphlet?
No, sorry. It's actually the song after this one.
Okay. Reynolds pamphlet.
The Reynolds pamphlet.
Not much of a song.
Not really a song.
Alexander Hamilton had a torrid affair,
and he wrote it down right there.
So this is all about them, like the public learning about the scandal. You know?
It's barely a song.
It's not much of a song.
Every time, put what we had aside. I'm standing at her side.
Yeah, Angelica gets mad at Hamilton. There's kind
and
of
then we go into what actually might be my favorite song. on the
Yeah.
album.
So this is then we get Burn, which
Yeah.
is the song where she sings about her betrayal of
Yeah.
being cheated on by this is being Eliza.
Mhm.
The world seemed to burn.
I really like to use a real fire.
She burns all of her like letters to him, and she's like, it's also saying that like people, because I think they're saying that there isn't any kind of documentation of how she reacted to the scandal because none of it exists, and it's kind of speculation.
The idea is that she burned it all.
Yeah, and so this kind of what this song is. It's like Philippa Sue, who plays Eliza, does a fantastic job with this song. It's a really melancholy song. It's not a song I like come back to listen to a lot, but
powerful. I really
it's good.
like her.
Yeah, she's very good in it. It's a well-crafted song, and it's a very sad song. And it was she tried to basically burn this out of the history books in some ways. That was like the interpretation of it, by a lot of historians, and how Lin-Manuel Miranda chose to characterize it in this show. So like this whole betrayal, this and just when we think like things are getting dark, then we kind of get this uplifting song, which is Blow Us All Away, which is another favorite song of mine. I listen to this one all the time. This is about Philip.
Who's his opponent here?
Oh, who's Philip? Like Philip Hamilton, who's the son of Alexander.
No, I know that, but who's his opponent in the duel?
His name is he's this other lawyer. He's this other New York lawyer, and that basically we find out he insults Hamilton at some kind of speech, and at this time, like if your honor was insulted, like there was always
challenged them to a duel.
If your honor was disparaged, then you almost had like an obligation, an imperative to like stand up for it, whether it was for your father, your son, or whatever. So
it goes back to Hamilton, and Hamilton basically says, "Don't do that."
Well, we saw that Hamilton doesn't really talk him out of it, because Hamilton did it for Washington in a similar sense, and during the 10 Dual Commandments and during that part of the story, right? Yeah. But we also get to see how this song is really too about how Philip Hamilton, the son, is like this great guy. He's got this great future ahead of him. He's just like his father, but maybe even better,
Meet the latest graduate of King's College. I probably shouldn't brag, but that guy amazing, astonished. The scholars say I got the same virtuosity. Your brains is my pops. The ladies say my brain's not where the resemblance stops.
Right? But he's like, I'm only 19. So he's the same age as Alexander Hamilton is
at the beginning of the story.
At the beginning of the story.
You had only heard the shit he said about you. I doubt you would have let it slide, and I was not about to. Slow down. I came to ask you for advice. This is my very first duel. They don't exactly cover this subject in boarding school. Did your friends attempt to negotiate a peace? He refused to apologize. We had to let the peace talk cease. Where is this happening? Across the river in Jersey. Everything is legal in New Jersey.
Yeah, and dueling was definitely not legal. It was not even really legal in New Jersey. But it was less, I guess, more tolerated there.
Yeah.
And so but like Hamilton, like as a father here, Alexander Hamilton really gives it the wrong advice. Instead of telling him not to do this duel at all, he's like,
point your gun in this guy.
Yeah, well, he's not going to shoot you. You won't shoot him. You'll just shoot your guns in the air. And a lot of like duels did end like that, where it was just a matter of, did you have the guts to get up there and stand in front of another guy with a gun and hope he didn't kill you, or would you be a coward and run away or whatever? So a lot of times, like, people would just go up to the duels and they would shoot up in the sky or whatever. And so that's what Alexander Hamilton's assuming is going to happen here. That's not what happens.
He shoot the other lawyer. He actually plays dirty. He shoots on the 9 count.
He shoots on, in the show, but that's not what happened in real life. There was no cheating in the actual real duel for Philip Hamilton. He just died. All right. As far as history goes, as far as we're told in history. So, but he's still dead. He still dies in this duel.
And we get Stay Alive Reprise, which is just a really good track.
Yeah. Well, this is where Eliza comes in.
And a half an hour ago, he lost a lot of blood
Is
on
he
the way
alive?
over. Yes, but you have to understand, the bullet entered just above his hip and lodged in
Can
his
I
right
see
arm.
him, please?
I'm doing everything.
And so this is where Philip dies. Kind of ended here with like the song where he was introduced.
And there's just this comforting between Hamilton and Eliza.
Well, not in this song. So
Not in this song, but-
that was the Stay Alive reprise where he doesn't, and then we get It's Quiet Uptown, another one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah, this is a pretty
I know
good
I keep saying that, but it's true. This song is all about them grieving for the death of Philip, and you could call it It's Quiet Uptown, but you could call it like trying to live with the unimaginable, trying to cope with this loss. And there's this whole thing of, like, he cheated on her. There's this public embarrassment. There's this anger she has towards him.
But there's also this forgiveness she gives to him in this song.
That's like the end of the song where it's like forgiveness. Can you imagine? And it's got this real like. It's really a nuanced song, a really beautiful song about forgiveness and love and loss, and it's mostly sung by Angelica.
Mhm.
I spend hours in the garden. I walk alone to the store, and it's quiet uptown. I never liked the quiet before. I take the children to church on Sunday, a sign of the cross at the door, and I pray. That never used to happen before.
There's a lot of truth to this song too, that basically they were neither of these parent, like Eliza or Alexander, were ever the same again. There was a sister, a younger sister to Philip, who they don't show in the show, but was apparently devastated for the rest of her life, that she was kind of institutionalized after the death of her brother. So there was a ton of loss. This was a huge tragedy,
Obviously,
and it's really, the song really is deep.
When it's quiet uptown,
He is trying to do the unimaginable. See them walking in the park long after dark, taking in the sights of the city.
look around, Eliza.
They are trying to do the unimaginable. There are moments that the words don't reach. There's a grace too powerful to name. We push away what we can never understand. We push away the unimaginable. They are standing in the garden, Alexander by Eliza's side. She takes his hand. It's quiet uptown. Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
We'll stop it there. But it's I don't know. It's maybe one of the smartest songs in the show, I think.
I really do like it. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. Then there's like this whole. Sorry.
This next part isn't. I could get past.
It's a shift change. Well, like it's this really like heartfelt song, and there's like this need in the show to sort of bring it back up and like get
the election of 1800.
Can we get back to politics, please? Yo.
And so they get into like the whole political thing here. The fact that Jefferson is running against Aaron Burr for the presidency, and that he's like, I need an endorsement because Aaron Burr, who's he says he's not particularly forthcoming on any particular stances. Right. They go, well, that's it. He's considered more moderate. But what if you could get Hamilton on your side? Right. Wouldn't it be nice to get Hamilton on your side? Which is, tying back to the Washington on your side song.
Right.
And
then, but obviously, it's like, he's very opposed to it because he hates Hamilton. But Hamilton, he knows Hamilton is such an important figure.
Right. But it's interesting to watch this song, especially in the stage version, where you see like how Aaron Burr is anticipating that Hamilton will endorse him, right? Because they've known each other all these years, that they've been friends. He always butts heads with Jefferson, but then Hamilton, he comes out here.
Be damned. Well, out. Hear my voice. Yeah. The people are asking to hear my voice. The country is facing a difficult choice. And if you were to ask me who I'd promote, Jefferson has my vote. I had never agreed with Jefferson once. We have fought on like 75 different fronts. But when all is said and all is done, Jefferson has beliefs. Burr has none.
And so
Basically,
that's
going back to the entirety of, talk less, smile more, completely starting to backfire in Burr's face.
right. And the fact, and you see, and then the show, you see how his character reacts to the betrayal, which ties directly into the next song, which is Your Obedient Servant, which is the song basically where they're kind of exchanging letters back and forth, Burr and Hamilton, about how they're mad at each other about all of this, how Burr is insulted, can't believe, how you've ruined my entire life, is kind of what Burr says to him in this song. But I think this is just a courtesy or an etiquette of the time where you would finish off a letter with like, Your Obedient Servant.
Right. There's clearly seething hatred behind.
There's all this animosity and anger and bitterness, but then they're like, and I'm pleased to be your obedient servant,
Yes.
Burr, which is
A man he's despised.
I just do like the instrumentals here, like
Dear Alexander, I am slow to anger, but I toe the line as I reckon with the effects of your life on mine. I look back on where I failed, and in every place I checked, the only common thread has been your disrespect. Now you call.
So yeah, he's like, you call me immoral, you call him, like we're gonna have a fight. We're going to the dueling ground, man.
And then
guns.
Hamilton tries to tell him, I don't want to do this, stand down.
Well, he also says though, he's like, I'm not going to apologize, I'm not going to take anything back, everything I said about you is true, and he's like, well then, we hawk.
You're wrong. I have the honor to be your obedient servant. A.Ham.
A.Burr.
It's a little catchy little song about these two guys who are getting ready to kill each other.
Yeah. We get to the best of wives, the best of women.
Right, it comes next, which is basically his goodbye to his wife, but
Right.
she doesn't know it, which is kind of it's
He doesn't tell her.
no.
Alexander, come back to sleep.
I have an early meeting out of town.
It's still dark outside.
No.
I know. I just need to write something down.
Why do you write like you're running out of time? Come back to bed, that would be enough.
I'll be back before you know I'm gone.
Come back to sleep.
This meeting's at dawn.
It's a really short song, but it's only
It's a
40.
really good one.
It's really good. And he's like, hey, best of wives and best of women. It's this nice little kind of final moment for them in the story, and then we get the final, which is kind of like it's not the big finale, but this is kind of the end of the story. The world was wide enough, which is sung by Burr. He'll say the lesson he learns here is like the world was wide enough for both Hamilton and me, but I couldn't see that. Because
I love the moment with Hamilton in this song where it's just like time has paused, and
where he's that moment there.
Yeah, he's panicking basically. He's like, I still need more. I need to do. There's still more I have.
Because he's kind of facing death. It's kind of seeing his life flash behind his eyes. Because it starts off much like the 10 Dual Commandments,
Pretty much.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
There are 10 things you need to know.
Number 1.
We rode across the Hudson at dawn.
It keeps going.
For the slaughter, this man will not make an orphan of my daughter.
Number 9.
Look him in the eye, aim no higher. Summon all the courage you require. Then count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
imagine death so much it feels more like a memory.
And so this is the part you're talking about where Hamilton will kind of give this monologue about dying, about him being afraid of dying, but he's also about how he sees his son on the other side. He sees George Washington on the other side, his mother, all the people he's lost, Lawrence.
Please wait for me on the other side, Eliza.
Right. You know, and so there's kind of like this thing here where, but then this immediate regret that hits Burr as at the end of it, you know?
I catch a glimpse of the other side and is watching the light.
Right, there it is.
Raise a glass to freedom.
He aims his pistol at the sky. Wait!
I strike him right between his ribs. I walk towards him, but I am ushered away.
And so it really feels like a funeral at this point. Like
because it basically is.
He doesn't die instantly.
We know
it takes like a whole day for him to die.
I hear wailing in the
And Leslie Odom's vocals are fantastic.
somebody tells me you'd better hide.
And it comes back to wait for it, too, where he's like, death doesn't discriminate.
We're both at his side when he died. Death doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes and it takes and it takes. History obliterates in every picture it paints me and all my mistakes. When Alexander aimed at the sky, he may have been the first one to die, but I'm the one who paid for it.
Yeah, he's like, when Alexander aimed his gun at the sky, he may have been the first one to die, but I'm the one who paid for it. You know, now I'm the villain in your history. And as from what I understand, Aaron Burr kind of died by alone. You know, and kind of destitute, and you know, and so like he's like, you know, I'm the one who paid for it. I'm the one who had to go on the rest of his life, you know, to with it. Where
Hamilton and also just the burden of killing him, right?
The burden of having killed like this revered man. Yeah. He ultimately didn't go to jail, but he was the vice president of the United States at the time too. Like it's pretty insane.
That would never happen anymore.
No, it could only happen during that particular time. And even at the time, this was considered to be like in poor form at the best.
Pretty much.
You know, but the world was wide enough for both Hamilton and me. Is kind of the end of the Burr story, and then we get the final track, which is "Who Lives,
It's almost
Who Dies."
a reprise of George Washington's song, his final song.
Which is it is sung by Christopher Jackson. Yeah.
Let me tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
President Jefferson.
So we get all like these, like, you know, Jefferson talks about, he's like, I hated his guts, but he, you know, he did a lot of good things, and all these people who are, it's almost like this funeral here for the Hamilton, you know, even from his most bitter enemies, you know. We hear about how Liza kept his story going, how Eliza interviewed
made
people
an orphanage
that he served with. She started an orphanage, and she went on and carried on for much 50 more years after he died. You know.
Soldier who fought by your side. She tells our story. I try to make sense of your thousands of pages of writings. You really do write, but you're running out of time. I rely on Angelica. While she's alive, we tell your story. She is buried in Trinity Church near you. When I needed her most, she was right on time.
We went to that church.
Yeah, we did go to that church. We saw
that graveyard. And presumably hers and all them too, all the Schuyler sisters and all of them, you know. And it's a really nice just kind of finale of a show. It's you know, but you know.
I established the first private orphanage in New York City. The orphanage. I helped raise hundreds of children. I get to see them growing up. In their eyes I see you, Alexander. I see you every time.
It's a good finale.
It's a really good finale.
Yeah.
It just feels like a good sense of finality.
Yeah, there's kind of like there's a cohesive story here. But on top of all that, I feel like all these songs really hold up, much like the Rent songs do for me too. That like they're all part of the show, they're all part of this of this big story. And in this case, it's kind of a history lesson.
They're top tier music along with
but
that.
I can listen to any one of these songs independently, not have to really think about the whole show.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially so I think we were saying like maybe we would just talk about what was of all the songs of what was your favorite track?
My favorite track, I was trying to think about this as we were going through it because it's really hard to pick. But I think maybe I would have to go with honestly, I think I would go with History Has Its Eyes on You. I just really like that song.
The finale? Or no, you mean the one in Act 1.
Yeah, History Has Its Eyes on You.
History Has Its Eyes on You. Yes. Okay. Track 19 of disc 1, if you will. Okay. And I think for me, my favorite track would have to be it might be like I have so many, but it might be Wait For It.
Yeah, I was thinking about Wait For It too, but
if it's not Wait For It, then it's probably the Schuyler Sisters is my next favorite.
That's interesting.
And if not that one, then I would probably put It's Quiet Uptown up there as well. But in terms of like, I think the Schuyler Sisters, I think is a very underrated song because it's such an upbeat song. Like we're going, work, it's just got all kinds of amazing.
It's a fun
moments.
song for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so those are our favorite tracks. What's your least favorite track?
I think we're actually going to probably agree on this one. We were talking about it, but it's probably going to be Say No to This.
Yeah, it's either saying, I think it's either Say No to This or like the Reynolds pamphlet, or something like that.
I didn't pick the Reynolds pamphlet because like it's barely a song.
It's not even like, there's a couple on here that are not really songs. I feel like they just left them on because if you took them out, maybe there's not much of a
context
story, but I don't know, like that's already kind of happening. I don't even know if you can call it a song.
That's why I picked Say No to This because it is definitely a song and I just don't like it that much.
Say No to This is you're right, is a song and it's a bad song. Yeah, it's like, would you say you prefer the Act 1 or Act 2?
I would definitely say I prefer Act 1. Act 2 had some great songs, but I do also think it had some either straight bad or just underwhelming songs.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Act 2 has like no bad songs, and Act 1 has no bad songs. Act 2, I think, does have like maybe 5,
a couple of them, right?
That I'm like, I mostly will just always skip this song.
Yeah,
I would hardly ever listen to this song. Okay, and then how do we want to rate the album overall?
Honestly, like I think that we should rate it as music and we should rate it as its story because I think those are both two things that are very important to music.
Okay, so rating the album, the music. Okay, so what do you want to give it out of 10?
I would probably give that like a 9-ish.
Yeah, I'd have to give it a 10 for music. It's one of my favorite albums ever, so I think I'd have to give it a 10 on story too. Like I think I'm gonna give it like I actually think I'm gonna give it an 8, and here's why. It's because listening to it as an album, you have to keep in songs that aren't really songs in order to keep the story cohesive. That would be my only complaint. The Story of Tonight.
But like Reynolds pamphlet and stuff, you have to keep that in there because otherwise it doesn't really make sense. But also, it's not an interesting song to listen to, so that would be my only complaint story-wise. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay. Well, overall, it seems like we pretty much liked it.
Yep.
So, and we hope you enjoyed this. This us running through all 46. We went through all 46 songs.
46. Yep.
It was not nothing, and it took us
Nope.
over 2 hours, but we did it. So
We did it.
this was the debut episode of this podcast, Eamon On Track.
I will
Going
be
through
happy
albums.
to continue this in the future. I was thinking we should do Rent too.
We will definitely do Rent. Like I think have another guest on.
Yeah.
And do another album. Maybe do one with Davan.
Darwin was suggesting something. Yeah.
He says, "Hey, I want to come on the show and bring This One's from the Heart by James Darren, who played Vic Fontaine on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Let's see. Okay.
Like a character.
Okay.
That could be fun.
That could be interesting. Yep.
Yeah. So check out this is we have our own YouTube channel, Facebook, and
Twitch.
Yeah, here for Eamon On Track. So we hope you've enjoyed it. We're gonna head off soon to have our Easter dinner. So but
have a lovely Easter, and it was great.
Happy Easter. We also we're part of a federation of podcasts, the United Federation of Podcasts, which has a lot of different shows, including Live Long and Podcast, a Star Trek theme one that I run, which has all kinds of Star Trek reviews like Star Trek Enterprise, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Right now we're covering Star Trek Picard season 3. We do Star Trek Radio Theater. We have various divisions in our Live Long and Podcast channel where we do science, the Blue Division. There's debates and trivias. We have Locutors of Trek with Davan. He does a lot of stuff. Radio Theater. Great stuff over there on Live Long and Podcast all the time. You should also check out our other ones like Trivial Debates, which is a monthly show. We argue about movies, TV, sports, and more.
What was this week or what was this month?
We just did a pro wrestling theme with Chris Murphy hosting, and it had Jaemeel and Jason Phillips and Andre Mayette. Speaking of Andre Mayette, he's got the X-Rated podcast with Davan every Tuesday where they talk about X-Men the animated series. On that one, Andre also has the Graphics Histories podcast. I don't have a banner here. There's the Hellbound podcast, a horror themed channel, which Alex Blackburn and Michael Chan comes out on Wednesdays, audio only podcast. And there's also the Super Mader Brothers podcast, right now covering Survivor season 44 and Big Brother Canada 11, as well as Marvel stuff we do over there. We talk about all kinds of different content, but mostly reality shows and Marvel. And Hold Up is a movie podcast that comes out every second Wednesday with Chris Murphy and Davan Skelhorn, where they talk about 3 movies in a different theme. In the near future, they're talking about hacker movies. They're talking about like internet movies, like Hackers, The Net, and Guns Akimbo or something. That will be their next edition. Check that one out. And then KBBL on Fridays with Davan, Francis, and Baker, where they talk about the episodes of The Simpsons. I think, Eamon, you were most recently on there talking about Treehouse of Horror 1.
The original, yep. I really liked it. It's great.
Good stuff. So you should check out all of our great content on the United Federation of Podcasts if you're not already. And thanks for being with us here on Eamon On Track for the debut episode.
Yeah, it was great. And I'll see you next. I don't have a catchphrase yet, but I'll see you next time.
See you next time. This is the catchphrase. All right.
The honor to be your obedient servant. A.Ham.
A.Bird.
See you next time, everyone.
Yeah.